Hello and welcome everybody to Vianet's, I think it's the first webinar. My name is Mark Parry and I am the Sales Director for Vianet Group Smart Machines Division. And together with Craig Brocklehurst will be one of your hosts for today's session. Craig, do you just want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yep, good afternoon everybody. Glad you could all join us. Yeah, my name's Craig Brocklehurst. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Vianet. This is our first webinar we've done, so please be gentle with us. Just point you to, we do have a Q&A questions and answer section. So if there's any questions you want to raise, please do so through the Q&A panel and we'll hopefully answer your questions at the end. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, so today's webinar is focused around how can we use data insight to drive real efficiencies throughout this pandemic, and we've managed to persuade 4 experts across both smart machines and the smart zones sectors to present how they're sort of utilising data to support their businesses and customers, through these troubled times. So in terms of the agenda, again, hopefully there won't be any technical issues. Just before we pass on to smart zones, so from a smart machines perspective, I'll be shortly passing over to Tim Knight, and he's from PepsiCo International. And Tim's going to be presenting how we might be using the data over the next 5 years. And then move on to Ross MacDonald from the Upton group, and he's going to be speaking about efficiencies and post-COVID operations in the vending sector. I'll be then passing over to my esteemed colleague Craig from the Smart Zones perspective, and he's going to be introducing Alison Jordan from the Oxford Partnership, and she's going to be presenting dynamic market data in the pandemic and beyond, and then passing on to Neil from Punch Pubs, and he's going to be speaking about Punch's experience using our BMS and iDraught systems. As Craig's pointed out, there will be an opportunity at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So we hope you enjoy the next hour or so. So before I pass on to Tim, I just thought it would be prevalent to just give you a brief introduction to Vianet. Our business started back in 1994 as Brew Lines, and we were delivering compliance to lease and tenanted customers, and that's how our heritage into telemetry insight began. The business was floated in 2006, and then in 2012 the business was renamed Vianet Group as we're known today. Probably more recently, back in 2017, Vianet acquired Vending, and that enabled the Smart Machines division to provide contactless telemetry and full ERP platform for our customers. And from then on, we've successfully continued to grow with some significant contract wins, and hopefully you can see that on the right-hand side. And as we stand today, we have over 230,000 devices across 300 customers connected to our platform. So hopefully that gives you a brief overview of Vianet. So on to my first guest, Tim Knight, who is the UK vending manager for PepsiCo. And Tim has worked for PepsiCo for the last 6.5 years. Prior to his current position, Tim has also held positions of IT, business intelligence, data analyst, and more recently sales project manager. So he's very experienced in data insight. So I'm now going to pass on to Tim.
Perfect, cool. And I'm unmuted myself, so I'll just quickly share my screen as soon as it comes up. And hopefully you get to see that. Just share. Cool, so hopefully everyone can see that. So hi everyone, so yeah, I'm from PepsiCo. Quick intro about me and my team that I'm with. So the team's slightly changed to somewhat that you might know, so we're going to communicate this out. So yeah, as Mark alluded to, so I've been working at Pepsi for 6 years, previously kind of in an IT roles, and then came over to sales a couple of years ago, very much in like the data analytics, and now I'm heading up the UK sector for vending in the UK. And then I'm actually having 2 new heads coming into the team, and so we're actually adding more heads into vending. So these guys are going to come in and going to support me, kind of taking over vending. So very much we're investing in vending, both in machinery and also looking more at the long term as well as the short term. Quick intro to PepsiCo for those who might not know. So PepsiCo, we're a multinational, and we make food and beverage kind of all across the globe. And I hope that many of you probably know many of our brands that we've got. So a little bit confusing in the UK with Pepsi and our beverages, we actually franchise out to Britvic. But in other markets, we make it ourselves, we bottle it ourselves, but kind of the main brands in the UK is kind of Walker's. So kind of what I want to talk to you today about is how we potentially could use data going forward. So I kind of want to start off with just back to the basics of bringing things back. It might be sucking out to some people, so apologies, and I'll also move this from down there. So kind of really bring things back to kind of what is data at the end of the day. So kind of data itself doesn't really hold much meaning. So data is just kind of the raw facts and figures. So for vending guys among us, that it will be kind of our telemetry data. So really, what is the data that comes out of the machine? Spiral 101 sold this many at this time. And it's kind of this raw facts and figures, and data itself doesn't hold a huge amount of value. It's then when you bring it up to that next level is the information level, which is where you start adding context. So we know that, say, Spiral 101 of this machine was sold at 80p at this time. Actually, that context level is actually, we know that Spiral 101 is, say, a chocolate bar, and that chocolate bar was sold at this point at this location. So that information layer is basically just that data with context. There's kind of that sales performance by machine. It's kind of your product performance layer. That knowledge layer then on top of that is then kind of that information with kind of some sort of meaning. So it's kind of, okay, so we know actually that 101 Spiral was a chocolate bar sold out of this machine, but actually it's that, oh, this chocolate bar is being sold at this time every single week by this same person. So it's kind of that knowledge layer. So then you can kind of do your route planning based off, we know this machine sells this level across this week. Therefore, we need to replenish it this time. And then kind of that wisdom layer on top is actually, oh, actually, now you've got that availability, you can work out your availability of machine based off kind of the information, that knowledge you've got. Based off how quickly that machine runs out, you can actually then layer another level on top is actually, okay, so we know that this machine typically will sell out this quickly, therefore we need to stock it up this much. But actually then you stick on another layer as, okay, we know that it's going to be really hot this weekend, therefore we're going to sell more drinks, therefore we need to stock up maybe twice this weekend rather than just once. So it's then adding that extra layer on top. So in its pure format, data doesn't hold a particular amount of value. It's only when you start adding in that context, that meaning, and that insights on top, which is when it starts to become really powerful. And I guess kind of why I'm talking about data today is that typically in vending that we're seeing from more of a manufacturer side is that we're actually quite data poor. We don't have a huge amount of data. We've got it from the small amount of machinery that PepsiCo own and kind of some of our partners that we're sharing with. But actually, we think there's value in sharing the data out. So kind of then when you kind of take away vending and just look at the total impulse, I kind of just want to share kind of the data that we've got. So using that same data pyramid, I've had to expand it out a little bit. It's kind of what are the insights that we have out there. So kind of the pure data layer that us as a manufacturer have, we kind of have till data that comes from our various customers, kind of like Tesco, for example. They'll send us their till data, every single product that sells at this different time, and it's that by itself doesn't really have any context, doesn't have a huge amount of meaning. But actually when you start sticking with panel data, so panel data is the likes of Kantar, for example, you might have heard of. They do like lots of survey data. So they take samples of people, samples being thousands of people per day, inputting what they bought at what time, where they've bought it. So it's kind of omni-channel. So you kind of can start to understand what products people are buying, where they're buying it, whether it's online, whether it's grocery, whether it's impulse, all that stuff. And then you kind of then got your macro data, so your weather data. So each of those four doesn't hold a huge amount of value. It's only when you start pulling them together, it's then you start getting that information layer. So you can kind of see, okay, in this retail store that it's selling this much at this time, therefore we can base our inventory management and stuff based off that, our route planning based off that information layer. I guess whereas PepsiCo can provide that extra layer on top, so that information layer is really powerful for the retailers, because they actually need to understand their sales performance. They really need to understand kind of how they're going to stock properly and be the most efficient they can do. What then PepsiCo or another, it doesn't have to be PepsiCo, another supplier or another partner can do is then we've got that capability then to start taking all four of those different kind of data sources and then overlaying those insights. So we've got teams, we've got kind of analytics teams, we've got business intelligence teams, we've got category teams, we've got a huge amount of resource behind the scenes that are kind of looking at this data, compiling it in different ways, presenting it in different kind of views to really understand, okay, so we know that this person, based off the panel data, we can see that this person has bought a chocolate bar every morning at 11 o'clock. In this shop, they've also be doing some online shopping, buying their groceries at this, but it's not buying chocolate bars. So you can really start to understand their shopping habits. So people are understanding what people are buying, what their motivations are behind, whether they want health, whether they want convenience, whether they want kind of a pick me up, any kind of that behavior traits that you see. And then from that, you can start saying, okay, what are people buying? What's their motivations behind it? Is then starting looking at category recommendation. So kind of what is the right things that we should be putting in based off your sales performance, based off your operations management, based off then also that shopper layer on top. What is the right products from a category lens? So this is irrespective of what manufacturer you're from, what is absolutely the right products you should be putting in your range. And then also from that, you can start to see emerging trends. So kind of like we always talk about health being this emerging trend, but actually where is health across all channels? Is in, for example, it's always called out the vending, and health is always seen as a growth channel. But is it really a growth channel? Is health more seen as more of convenience rather than a vending side of things? So it kind of, you can really start to unlock that data. And then kind of the actions that you can start building out that PepsiCo can, or another manufacturer can provide back, is then actually we can come back to the retailers and our customers to kind of then layer on, okay, based off now we know the shopping habits, the sales performance, all this data that we've now got, all this information and insights. It's really understanding what's the best availability, and obviously best availability means more sales. You can more chance for sales and everything like that. You got the right ranging, and then also you can start to really target growth based off the category recommendations and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of impulse, in terms of the wider impulse, that's kind of like the layers that we're really seeing, and that's what we're working with day in, day out at the moment. So we can really understand, all right, on a sunny day, we need to make sure there's more I don't know, carbonated soft drinks at this retailer outlet. And actually what we're starting to do is build up machine analytics to say automatically start sending data and automatically start sending stock to these certain stores and things like that. So it's becoming really powerful, this data layer. When you start to overlay, okay, what do we see then? If we overlay what we're seeing in impulse to then what we're seeing in vending, actually what we're seeing from a partner's side of things is actually we're really struggling to see kind of the shopping habits and the consumer behavior, kind of this insights lens. So we can see the kind of the sales performance, so we can understand the ops management side of things. But the shopping habits and kind of what motivations people, we just don't have any of that data. And we don't have any of that insights or anything like that. And the category recommendations is really based off kind of the sales performance, ops management, and then also what we're seeing in the wider impulse. So it's not really the best recommendations that we can actually provide. But what you can start to unlock, that actually if you start becoming available to that EPOS data, that till data, so the telemetry data, for example, in vending machines, whether it's kind of other telemetry data in other sectors, you can start to unlock what's being sold at what point or what time. You can then start, based off that, you can start commissioning bespoke research, so really understanding what is happening, say, in a hospital, in vending, what's really the motivations behind people buying certain products. And then unlocking that data layer will then enable you to unlock that insights layer. So once we start understanding what people are buying, when they're buying, what's their motivations behind it, you can then start really understanding the trends that's happening, both the trends now and also the trends that's coming in the next 5 years, really. And then from that, it then unlocks all those different actions. So I guess what we're talking about, so I guess in the data in the next 5 years is what we'd really like to see and what we're really trying to push for, particularly this year in 2021 coming into it. It's really to start unlocking this EPOS and this telemetry data, both from a telemetry from kind of a vending machine side, but also micro market, because micro market, I guess, is still fairly juvenile and it's not particularly mature in the UK in terms of kind of that category recommendations, what's their buying habits compared to, say, buying like a Tesco Express and things like that. So it's things that as a partner we can kind of help with. Then I want to try and kind of bring this to life for everyone to really understand, to really hit home, hopefully. So if we take an example of a hospital. So in a hospital, there's various retail outlets. So you might have a WH Smith selling products, and these will be selling crisps, snacks, drinks, anything that a vending machine does. You'll have a cafe also selling coffee, and you're also selling crisps and chocolate and biscuits and things like that. And a restaurant, which will be selling crisps, sweets, chocolate, as well as their food on top. Then you've got vending, also selling crisps, sweets, juice, whatever. So when you actually look at the offering that it is, a vending offering could be seen, particularly by the site, as an exactly the same offering that retail outlet. And if you take those in isolation, like, you will make your category recommendations based off what you're seeing without that lens of that hospital. So in that particular hospital, you're going to have that recommendation for WH Smith. They're going to have their recommendation of absolutely the best sellers. But then when you start to make the vending recommendations, okay, we'll put the best sellers for what we know. But actually, when you put those data together, so we've got data for those retail outlets, for the WH Smith, we'll have that cafe data, we'll have that restaurant data, and now we'll have that vending data. So we'll be able to see that total on-site spend for all of those outlets. So it means for that hospital, we can see exactly what everyone is buying, not at like a personal level, not like Joe Bloggs is buying this, but more of a, we know that this is being bought, these are the motivations behind these purchases. So therefore you can start to put on that insights layer on top. So actually health, for example, in hospitals is likely to be a big thing in hospitals. But actually, is health the motivations behind people buying from a vending machine, is that a health driven decision, or would that be more from a restaurant decision? Are people looking more, is it a stronger pull from a restaurant than it is for vending? Therefore, if it is stronger in a restaurant, then your vending machine, it might be better tailored to maybe more an indulgent or more of a convenient pick me up, or is coffee the better option? And so you can start to really tailor based off the behaviors, the different offerings that you've got. So kind of from a vending perspective, it's instead of trying to basically just duplicate all the different products you've got from a retail outlet, where you'll be seen as competing against WH Smith and things like that. You'll have the convenient aspect, But actually, if you can get a more targeted range for exactly what those behaviours and those missions, that shopper mission of those consumers, actually you could then tap into a lot more revenue from there. Because if you target exactly what people are wanting, obviously they're going to buy more of it.
Tim?
So that, yeah.
Sorry, this is great. Could we, obviously we've got other presenters on, could we push this forward slightly?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So this is my last slide, absolutely. So yeah. So, and then, yeah, then you can enable that right product, right place. So I guess that's kind of like the 5-year journey. So appreciate that it's going to take a while to do that. So then kind of what can we do today? So a lot of these operators and a lot of like customers, even on the call today, they'll have really good EPOS and telemetry data inside their organization. So it's what would be really good is to try and break those silos of data, start sharing that both between the operators, both with manufacturers, work with your trusted partners. So we're not saying work with everyone. So work with the people you only want to work with and that can provide, both can provide value and actually mutually share data. So likewise, we could share that insights data back and things like that. So that's exactly what we're after. So yeah, so that's kind of me. So I think that's kind of the presentation I've just done. So hopefully that's all right. So I'll stop sharing.
Great. Thanks, thanks, Tim. And is it still B2 is the best selling spiral for Walker's cheese and onion?
It still is, yeah.
It's still B2. There you go. There's me vending heritage back then experience. But thanks very much for that, Tim. Really appreciate it. Just going to move on to my second guest from a Smart Machines perspective, and I really want to say thanks to Ross because he's come straight from the dentist this morning. So Ross is the managing director from the Yorkshire-based Upton group, and Ross has a wealth of experience, over 30 years experience within the operated vending, coffee roasting, and also catering supplies market. And Ross has joined us today to talk about his business challenges pre and during this pandemic, and more importantly, what measures he's put in place to mitigate those challenges. So Ross, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. First of all, apologies, my mouth's numb. You struggle to hear me at the best of times. It's going to be hard now. When John Ford asked me to do this, he asked me to focus specifically on the current issues we're facing as vending operators in the pandemic, and then to look at any, basically specifically data and data requirements post-pandemic. That being the case, for me, when I looked at it, leaving out the factors such as Brexit and government legislation, the 3 key factors for me going forward at the moment, or the 3 key issues, are competitors, suppliers, and our customers. And each of them is a different place to play in where we are at the moment. Our competitors at the moment, it's not, I think at the moment, what we're doing is we're actually taking some negative and retrograde steps. We are, prior to March and prior to the pandemic, I think the industry had taken some fairly heavy strides to get away from this race to the bottom that we'd got ourselves on. We'd actually stopped selling predominantly on price, and started to look at more than things like service levels, stock ranges, and so on, and actually trying to make ourselves different. We stopped effectively being busy fools, and realised that there's a value to what we have to offer. What we're noticing since March is, well, I'll give you an example. We've lost 2 accounts. One of the accounts, for instance, both we've lost to a price that is not only lower than prior to the pandemic, but is lower to a price than we actually won the contract 6 years ago. And that isn't healthy. You know, my concern is if that continues, the industry as a whole will suffer, the individual businesses will suffer, and all of us will suffer. And it's something that we've got to try and get back from. So that my issue with the competitors. If we take the one with suppliers, we've already got some suppliers at the moment who are trying to capitalise, is the best way to put it, on the situation by blatant profiteering. We've got one supplier at the moment who've already hit us with double-digit price increases, and warned us that if we end up with a no-deal Brexit, that will be increased again. The matrices and the indices relating to the raw material for their product do not show those sorts of increase. So their justifications that are impossible. And a result is that you can only view that as pure profiteering. And one thing we're all going to have to remember through this, there have been some suppliers who have been incredibly supportive of all of us as operators through the pandemic. But for everyone that's been supportive, there has been another one that's hindered us and prevented us developing. And the only thing I would say about that is when this is over, these things will be remembered. You know, ultimately we have to go forward together, and people will remember the ones that have hurt us as we've tried to survive through this crisis. And thirdly, for me, the other one is customers in terms of where we are at the moment. What we're finding, customers who have worked through the pandemic, they fully understand and actually appreciate the effort and the help and the work we've put in to continue to provide this service. What we've found is those that have come back from furlough have predominantly expected the services to be exactly as they were prior to the pandemic, regardless of what they're asking us to do. An example of that, we had a firm of solicitors. They told us they were bringing no more than 10% of their staff back. They expected us to work to the contract as it was written, which meant visiting every day. When we said it wasn't feasible, they threatened to sue us for breach of contract. It was only when the managing partner, who had worked throughout, informed the person who'd been recently unfurloughed that this was unreasonable, that there was a breakthrough and we all managed to work together. And so the summary for me, that those three things are the issues that are combining to create issues for us at the moment. But you know, none of them are insurmountable, but they're issues that we'll all be facing in different ways. And especially within vending, where we are so service driven and we are very much in the customer's mindset. So the second part of what John asked me to look at was going forward, how data can help us to overcome a number of these issues. And for me, I identified 4 areas. I'm pretty sure everybody else can identify more, but for me, the 4 areas were like data. It has to be live. It has to be bang up to date. Secondly, the data being that, as Tim will confirm, will help us in dealing with the brands. It will get them to agree to see us as a real route to market. We need further route planning with operations. And in fact, data has to be able to be used in management, and we have to understand where it fits in to our management of our companies. So we have data at the moment. We're all struggling for time. We're all struggling to understand so data really, like I said, it has to be live. We have to be able to monitor, to manage and to plan our businesses. Gone are the days where we turn to our data suppliers and we wait a day, a week, a month for a response. These days are gone. We have to now be much more proactive. Reacting is only going to cost us, and we cannot let that continue. We need to get information, like I said, it's live, it's pertinent, and it's immediate, because that's how we'll maximise our own efficiencies and enable us to do our businesses better.
Ross, can I ask a question on that, because this, you know, that resonates with quite a lot of operators there. You know, in terms of you talking about and efficiencies you've had to make, how has that sort of impacted headcount within your business, sort of pre and during COVID?
I'll explain that. Prior to COVID, we had 3 separate businesses and we had a total of 82 employees. Unfortunately, we've had to make 16 people redundant. So, I mean, that's just shy of 20% of our workforce, and we still have 14 people on furlough. So at the moment, we're sitting with over 36% of our staff are either furloughed or unfortunately now out of work. We also took a decision that because of efficiencies, we had to effectively amalgamate a business we bought last year, which was catering supplies, with our coffee roaster, effectively to create a one-stop shop in that marketplace. Mm-hmm. And we took the view predominantly because they deal with the same customers. So it just seemed to make sense. What I will say is we've also taken a decision, not in terms of looking at forward, what we're going to do. We've made these cuts, but we've also had to look forward, and post-pandemic there are issues we're all going to have to address and get over, and one of them is how we get back to where we started, never mind how we grow. So while it's not all negative, we're currently developing a new showroom with a specific focus on micro markets, because we see that as a market to go into. We've got our first one up. We'll see that as more important. We're currently building a new website for our vending sector. Mm-hmm. And we are upgrading our social media profile for our coffee and catering market, because one of the things that we've found through this, our coffee business, the coffee roaster, prior to the pandemic, it was virtually all business to business. It was businesses at coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, you name it. At the beginning of this, we put a bit of focus on social media, and we've actually replaced the business we've lost on the B2B side with B2C. So we've got a lot of business to consumers. So we're actually selling, instead of selling large quantities, we're selling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kilo bags at a time to customers. So we've changed the model there a little bit at the moment through this pandemic.
Ross, I'm sure that because we've got quite a few operators on, I'd be interested to see some more questions at the end of that. Just one more point. I am a bitter Evertonian, and I can see a Liverpool top behind you there, so we're going to fall out.
I can tell you that's only there because it's King Kenny. He's the same shirt from King Kenny.
Well, I just want to say, thanks very much, particularly from a Smart Machines last week. We had some great insight from Tim in terms of a brand and an operator who's been right through the mill recently and will come out the other side. So my thanks to those two. And I'm now going to pass over to our COO, Craig Brocklehurst, to talk about the smart zones.
Thanks, Mark. Some really good stuff there, guys. Thank you very much. And building on some of the slides we saw from Tim, very much about that data pyramid, we can see there's commonality throughout vending and hospitality, etc., in what we're trying to achieve. So to give a little bit more of an insight on that, I'd like to introduce my first guest speaker, which is Alison Jordan, who's the CEO of Oxford Partnership and comes from a long and varied background in beer, in the beer industry, having joined the then Whitbread Beer Company in 1992. During your time in Whitbread, then Interbrew, then AB InBev, and Alison, you've worked across a variety of sales operations and marketing roles as well, both in the UK and globally. So Alison joined Oxford 12 years ago, when you were 16, I think it was. And she's seen some vagaries of data within the on-trade for herself, and determined to create a robust and reliable on-trade data source that could stand the test of time and become increasingly dynamic, which is really, really important these days. And on the back of that, delivering a real-time market intelligence on an ongoing basis. And in this quest, Passive Oxford and Vianet have come together. We've been working closely now over the past 12 months with Alison and her team, and overlaying our flow meter with their dynamic data. So Alison, if I can pass over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Yes, here at Oxford, we've been supporting the hospitality industry now for 30 years. And in this 30-year anniversary of us, a bit like everybody else in the pandemic, we've missed out on our birthday celebrations too. So in terms of what I'm going to share with you today is really looking at the power and benefit of dynamic data for the hospitality industry. As I said, Oxford have been supporting the hospitality industry by mapping outlets in both the on-trade, the off-trade and the on-the-go market. And as Craig alluded to, we specialise in real-time dynamic data, which is allowing our customers to understand the economies basically that they operate in. So what I'm going to do to start with is just to talk about the data need that we've seen this year during the pandemic. And then what I'm going to talk about is how data can then help us in terms of navigating our path. But what I want to do is to take you back to the beginning of 2020. There we all were celebrating the new year and full of positivity about Brexit, because finally it was over. The headlines were done, Parliament had voted, and that all went through on the 23rd of January. Interestingly, on the same day, the Foreign Office advised us against travel to Wuhan, which was the epicenter of this pandemic that we were just starting to learn about. Then fast forward to the 20th of March, and hospitality is now forced to close. And on the 23rd of March, Boris told us the unthinkable, that we needed to stay at home, save lives and protect the NHS. Within 80 days, our way of life had been turned on its head. And really, there was a huge need now for us to understand what was going on. So what we needed to do from both a hospitality industry point of view, as well as from a world point of view, is to understand what data could do for us. And that data needed to be dynamic, accurate and timely. And if I was going to take the mickey of our government, I would now say, next slide, please. So in terms of what we think of at Oxford, we think that data doesn't lie. We start from that premise. We think that it's most powerful when it's used with experience and to support decision making. And we think that if data is then integrated into KPIs, it can make the decision making fast. And the other thing that it can do is it can create transparency and trust as long as the data is clearly described. And perhaps, again, this is a lesson that the UK government can learn in terms of some of its dealings with the hospitality industry. But by using data, we can drive decisions and we can reduce costs. And in these sort of uncertain times, those costs have been anything from, do we furlough our staff, to for our brewing clients, do we brew, to obviously to the hospitality sector, do we actually close in the first place? So if I now sort of look at how we've utilised the power of the internet to enable us to map and monitor outlets in real time, what you'll see on the left-hand side is a smartphone, which is...
Sorry, Alison, can you? It's not come up on the screen, your presentation.
Oh.
I have to share your screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I was presenting that. Can everyone see that now?
Yeah, we've got. Brilliant.
Oh, I apologise. So yes, so apologies for that. So basically, what we're doing is harnessing the power of the internet to map and monitor outlets in real time and to overlay it with partner data, as Craig described. So on the left-hand side, what you can see is a smartphone. What we're doing in Oxford is we're utilising the power of that smartphone to understand what's happening within bricks and mortar retail. So you can see on the left the power of Google Maps. Google Maps can tell us how busy an outlet is. It can tell us how long somebody spends within that outlet. It can tell us what the consumer thinks of that outlet. So what we do is we create metrics utilising that and another variety of data sources. So we can look at outlet occupancy, how busy an outlet is by hour of day. We can look at dwell time in terms of how long consumers spend, what the consumer thinks in terms of the outlet. So we can look at how it rates it, and we can look at how it talks about an outlet, as well as its view of its value. We can then also overlay that with how outlets actually promote themselves about their products and services, as well as overlaying the power of the mobile data itself, which will tell us who the customer is, their age profile and their demographics. And then lastly, as Craig was talking about, we then have volumetric data that we can overlay to see what's going on. So if we look at what's been happening during the time of this pandemic and we take ourselves from the 4th of July back to the 26th of October before lockdown 2.0, what this data did, it has allowed us to track remotely what's happening within that hospitality industry. We could see that, at the beginning of last year, we had some 115,000 outlets serving the industry. By the 26th of October, that number of opened outlets had shrunk to 68.9 thousand outlets. And what we see over the course of the 17 weeks up to the 26th is exactly how many outlets were opening on a weekly basis. What the data also allowed us to do was to look at how consumers were interacting and how the occasions were changing. So what we could see is pre-pandemic, for example, that a consumer was spending on average 133 minutes within an on-trade outlet. Whereas if we looked at it come the 26th of October, we saw that that had fallen to 114 minutes. And if you think about it, it takes about 15 minutes to drink a pint. That's, you know, the amount of potential revenue that the trade was losing. And as a result of not just using dynamic data, but also using other sources, we can then overlay styles of outlets. So whether it's a free trade, a leased or a managed, to look at how that differs. And then the other thing that we can do is building over time, we can look at how the consumer trends change. And all of this data you could look at a regional level, all the way down to the dog and duck on your local high street. And how this data has helped us is it's allowed us to see what actions can be taken in this new normal. And it's allowed us to help our clients to aid decision making as to where to best spend and where to invest. So what we see, for example, is how Eat Out to Help Out, where outlets, we all know it was a huge success. But what we could actually see is which days of week on the right hand side were driving the most success for outlets. And also how different styles of promotion online could help draw in more consumers to spend more time and to spend more money. What we also have is the ability to overlay other facilities. So you can look at the impact of outdoor seating or the promotion of a really great COVID policy, or even what's happening in terms of the showing of sport and accepting of reservations. So all these different metrics we're able to glean by reading what the internet has to offer and then overlaying with these other dynamic data sources, which leads us really to look at the report that we're issuing today. So this report today is showing us that in the first week since lockdown 2.0, what do we see? We currently see, sadly, 43.5% of our on-trade currently not able to sell alcohol, which you see in the red. What you also have seen, and our numbers interestingly are backed up by other data sources. I was reading the email today from Langton Capital and they were quoting the same numbers. 24% of tier 2 outlets have sadly chosen not to open because of the harsh restrictions that exist. 34% of outlets in tier 2 have also decided not to open Monday to Wednesday because of the lack of consumers, and 27% are not open during the day. And what you can see on the right hand side is just how the trade has changed from tiers 1, 2 and 3 to now really where tier 2 existed previously. It's now really where tier 3 existed previously. It's now really where a lot of outlets find themselves in today in terms of tier 2. What we're then able to do as a result of this is to utilise data. So Craig was talking about the way that we work with Vianet. So for example, if we look at the insight we've just seen, which is that 34% of the trade are not opening Monday to Wednesday, this actually can represent to an outlet nearly 34% of its weekly draft beer sales. Or if we look again at the 27% of outlets that are choosing not to open between 11 and 4 p.m, you can see there that this represents 36% of the average daily draft sales. And what this means is by understanding this style of data and insight, you can start to help operators and brewers understand how they can service and how they can operate within these changing times. So at Oxford, we do believe that data is clearly an asset and it's our vaccine to the chaos caused by COVID in 2020. We also believe we just need to be smarter about how, as it says there, we use data to not get lost in it, but to enable us to be resilient and fast. And as a result of that, what we've been doing at Oxford is supplying the trade on a weekly basis, a free report, giving you insight and access to that insight to help you to run your businesses. And you just have to head over to our website to sign up to see the data. But yeah, sorry about the beginning of the presentation and not obviously seeing me and not seeing my slides. So apologies for that.
No, that's brilliant, Alison. Thanks for that. Some great insight. And yeah, we've been, like we say, we've been working closely over the last 12 months. And some of the reports that you've been putting out there into our industry in hospitality, and some of them free of charge to assist with certain things, has been absolutely fantastic. and some really good insight on that. So if anybody who's on this webinar wants to go over to the website and have a look, I would highly recommend it. I mean, there's some really interesting stuff on there. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, over to my next guest, which is Neil Tooth. Neil is responsible for driving operational improvements and beer quality in Punch's retail estate, and is the compliance lead in their L&T estate. He also supports Punch's operational team by directing and coordinating activity and offering investigative support as necessary. So thanks for joining us, Neil. One question I'd like to ask and put across to you is, can you talk us through how you've been using the Vianet's BMS and iDraught data since the pandemic began, and do you feel you found new ways to utilise that data?
Yeah, we've certainly we found new ways to use the data that we receive. What's become apparent during the pandemic is the daily feed that has been available for us all the while. Really, there's definitely been more of a focus for us using the daily feed than we did before, and there's been more focus on the data from a lot more people. Our operations team's use of the data before was sporadic, to say best, but now they're using the systems that are available to them, and in turn that's increased to with them doing a lot more diving down on the data and having a lot more into their individual sites and the regions in and around the lockdown. So there's definitely been data there that we've had access to, that we've used more, but there's also different ways that we've used the data and some of the new data that we've also created during the pandemic.
And I think that's key, isn't it? I mean, you get the there's a lot of data out there, and there's probably companies that have already been receiving this data for a number of years, but it's actually how the pandemic has drove companies to really look at how you utilize that data. How can you use different data sets to pull together to give you a clearer understanding of what's going on. Also, as well, like you've said, Neil, there, I think it's really important, as near real time as you can get it. That is really important when it comes to data, so you can start to act on that. So just on the back of that, have you found the data useful in navigating around lockdowns and reopenings?
The data around reopening has been huge, because it's without us physically being in every site, in every hour of the day, in a majority of cases, that's been our only visibility on the volumes that comes out of that data. We know how much stock has gone into our sites through our ordering system, but the actual volume of what has been served and pulled through, we get that from our Vianet reports and the daily feeds. So we've also used the data in our MP estate, which is our managed estate, where we had to lock down to make sure all the correct procedures around cleaning lines and putting them into hibernation were followed. So there's been different ways, but the data's played an absolute massive part during the lockdown with us. Yeah,
I mean, one of the key things the data we used in a lot of our customers we saw was when we did the beer destruction program. So rather than having to send people to locations with the social distancing and the cost of getting seller services out there to actually watch beer destruction and monitor and manage it through, you were able to do that using the flow meter data from Vianet.
Yeah, and of course, because we cover the whole of the country, there was different, working with the local authorities, there was different times that we had to do that destruction as well. The beer couldn't go into the sewerage system in a lot of places, so we were given specific times that we needed to destroy the beer and pull it through, and yeah, we used it to monitor. If a site was saying they had 200 gallons, then we could sit and we could use the analysis that you've got in Vianet to help us have a look through that and monitor it as it was going through and track the actual amounts that were going through to be destroyed.
And you can evidence it to the environmental companies of when exactly it was done. It was in that compliance window, yeah. So it's very useful. Yeah. And how have you found it? How's Punch found it coming out of lockdown 2.0?
Different is the honest, as everyone is finding it. I mean, during obviously there's the two systems that we use. So we've got the brew lines monitoring system, which is used mainly in our lease and tenanted estate. We use that we produce the data management variance trend reports. We use it for the tamper tracker. We produce our calculated deficit reports from that, our like-for-like comparisons. That system also gives us the insight about how we stand up in the market. So that's a very important bit of kit for us. We can split that down into regions. So our operations managers, they have full access to this and they can use it as part of their business meetings with the publicans. And then they also use it to monitor the volumes and the trading patterns on their area. So the draft monitoring system in our L&T site is predominantly used just in there, but then in our managed estate, we use the iDraught system. And obviously we've got iDraught in some of our L&T estate, but mainly in our managed estate, and we use that for the quality, where we can look at the line cleaning, the throughput, the pouring yields, the till yields, training patterns. We get the till data from that because we've got the till feed into that system as well. But this one, the iDraught is also used as a management tool for our publicans to use as well, and we encourage them to use it. So it's a fantastic tool for them to use on a daily basis. But obviously during the pandemic, a lot changed, and with the industry being basically shut down, we had to tweak how we use the data platforms on a day-to-day basis, and our pubs were closed and our ops teams were working from home. So what became clear very early was that there would be more focus on those systems that we use and the need for us to pull out the real-time data as quickly as we possibly could. When the first lockdown hit, as I said earlier, we used the systems to monitor the running down of our stocks and then shutting down the lines, especially in our managed estate, and making sure that they've followed the closing down procedures, because obviously it's an expensive bit of kit and we needed to make sure that it was shut down and it was looked after properly. So the beer destruction, as I say, we used it with the local authorities to make sure that everything on that was tracked. And then after that was done, we used the system and the analysts that you guys have got at Vianet to track the sites that were being proactive and getting open for takeouts, and that meant we were able to track the volumes in those sites, and it was a really key bit of information for us because it showed the pubs and the publicans that were doing different things in their communities, and it then allowed us to share those ideas with other publicans going forward as well. Also, during the pandemic, we had a realignment of duties within Punch. So we used the lockdown period for us to look closer at working with Vianet of how we could use the reports, and we wanted to produce a new report that was more user friendly around compliance for our operations team. So once our sites were back open, we found that there were a number of reports that we could actually live without that we'd been using before, and not having these. That freed up more analyst time at your end that could be spent on producing some more real-time data for us and getting the volumes out to the ops teams. So the new report we rolled out in September, and that's a really important tool now for our OMs, and it gives them more focus on what sites they need to visit. Once sites reopened, we had a clear visibility on the sites, and if there were any that opened or that were running on reduced hours or only on specific days. Eat Out to Help Out was a very busy time, so you guys would produce us the daily feed for our volumes. As I say, that was a great tool for us to use during this time, and I'd say that's probably the report that's attracted more of an interest at board level. The daily volume report is something that we have more focus on now as a company. And it's something that we'll definitely continue to use, and now we've come out of lockdown too, and we've gone into the tier system. Hopefully we can use that report to start also using that on a daily occurrence when we get back into what we hope will be the norm. So I think once our estate is fully open, the variance reports and the CD reports will be part of our daily routine again, and we can use the shared data. We used the shared data that we had from lockdown 1. So when lockdown 2, we were back in a place where we were relying on the daily feeds again. And then you had the new rules in Scotland, you had the new rules in Wales. So it was great for us because using both systems, we're able to pull out the information for those areas. And now in lockdown obviously England's gone down into lockdown too, so we've got pubs in all 3 tiers. So the daily reports are now broken down into countries and then ops areas. So we can use the data from tier 1 and tier 2 sites to help us predict what's going to happen if any of our tier 3 sites drop into them. So we're using that volumes and also comparing it to the capacity of stock that we might need if any of our tier 3 sites drop in, hopefully, into tier 2 and to tier 1.
Brilliant. So that's really using, that data set in its entirety for many different things, operational, I like the way that you guys are using it to see where certain sites are doing better volumes. What are they doing? Can we share that success story with other people to get them back in front? And so I think it's a fantastic way, and it's also promoting how to use data effectively. We can all just sit back and go, oh, we've got data, yeah, it's a report I get every day, and sometimes it falls by the wayside, and sometimes you need to just put the brakes on and go, hey, do you know what? We've got some really good, powerful data here, but it may be in a format that we don't need to use anymore. We just need to reformat that data, bring some other key metrics in there, and re-energize that data and what exactly we need to do with it. So, Neil, thank you very much for that. That's absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you to all our guest speakers. You've been absolutely amazing. This is his first webinar, so I hope it's not gone without too many technical glitches. I can't really see from here, so I'm hopeful. But what we do is we do have some questions, and I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. One's from Matt Brocklehurst of OTI, who's asked the question, just interested in general with data and how is AI being used? Okay, well, I can answer that in terms of Vianet. From a Vianet point of view, we've got quite a few projects going on in the background with our data science teams at the moment, utilising AI and our data warehouse and data scientists, as they're called now, and they're looking at things like predictive ordering solutions, auto calibration solutions, all of those really key things. And the beauty of it is to get those AI calculations correct, you need a lot of data. And that's one thing, Vianet's been in the hospitality industry for quite some time now. So we've got an abundance of data to use to get the best out of AI. So Matt, in answer to your question, we are utilising AI, we're looking at it, and there's some exciting things on the horizon. The next question is, and I think Alison's answered it, but I will, just in case nobody can see the responses, is the Oxford Partnership report Alison refers to available for review?
Yes, it is. Basically, if you want to head on to our website, which is www.oxford-partnership.com, there's a section in there where there's a number of different data insight projects that you can review, you can download for free. And also, if I may, we're also using AI as well, just to sort of carry on with that question too. We're using AI particularly in terms of helping us to do clustering and segmentation. So where we currently read something like 22 markets around the world, we're using AI to help us to understand how you cluster different markets and consumers together. To understand how it works. And then also we're using AI now in terms of data matching, because it's become an impossible task, basically trying to match databases. But I hope that answers the question from our perspective as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alison. And we've just got one more final question before we wrap up, which is from Steve. Do you have an estimate on how much beer was destructed per pub on average? Yes, we have the data, but I don't have the answer to hand. So if you want to drop me an email, well, I'm sure we can get our data team to look at giving you some high level numbers on that one as well. So on that, guys, I'd like to again thank all our guest speakers from today. I'd like to thank Rachel for putting this together, our marketing manager, who's been very stressed for the last couple of days. And with that, I will finalise this webinar. So thank you all for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you soon.